What's up, boxing fans? I'm Michael Montero for Boxing Monthly. You're watching the Neutral Corner for the week of May 28th. And you know what? The kid's got a sore throat. So I'm going to have a drink, but I need a coaster because I don't want to mess up my table. That's a coaster, son. All right, so there's a lot going on right now. Not so much action in the ring to talk about, although there's some fights last weekend. There's some stuff coming up this weekend. Mainly, there's a lot of negotiations going on. There's a lot of fans complaining. In case you've been sleeping under a rock, you all know that Canelo dumped his WBC belt. So I want to talk a little bit Canelo Triple G Lara, because that thing won't go away. And I'm going to address the demographic. Yeah, I'm going to go into the demographic thing. Let's get into some news and notes. Okay, so like I said, last week Canelo Alvarez dumped his WBC title. And, you know, Golden Boy had this press release and everything where Canelo basically talking through, a PR person had this little statement. It was all very scripted and it made it seem very, very nice and neat. And he said, I'm going to continue negotiations with Golovkin because I do want to fight, but I'm not going to fight with any artificial deadlines, blah, 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 blah. He was referring to the WBC and their 15-day negotiation period that they mandate, and then they go to purse bid. Now, there's a lot of different ways to look at this thing, and the reaction on Twitter was crazy, right? You had the Golovkin haters kind of backing Canelo. You had the Triple G fans dissing Canelo. You had a bunch of memes going back and forth. It was very interesting. But my initial reaction was that the timing of it seemed weird because it was last week. They still had a week to negotiate. Golden Boy Promotions with K2s, with Tom Loeffler, to come to some sort of deal before the WBC took it to a purse bid hearing. You guys know I talked about this in the video I did for the negotiations of that fight. The purse bid was going to be 55-45. There's no way Golden Boy and Canelo wanted that. And K2, Triple G, they knew they weren't getting 45% because this is an A-side, B-side scenario. It's more like a 70-30 kind of thing. So what I didn't understand is why not wait until the last day, the 15th day, if you're going to dump the belt, then dump the belt. And then you can make it about the purse bid split. But to do it a week before, it makes it seem like this was the plan all along from Canelo and Golden Boy. Whether it's Canelo's plan or not, it was definitely Golden Boy's plan to dump this belt and to go on with another fight, maybe two more fights, before eventually fighting Triple G next year. This is what I thought would happen all along. It's kind of what I tried to hint to without out and out saying it in the videos and in the articles I've written and everything I've done. Guys, just Google my stuff on this. I've been saying all along, it's happening next year, right? Well, okay, let's look at this from a fan's point of view. Fans know what they want it right now. They want Canelo Triple G. And I understand that. And my initial reaction was, this sucks. Canelo's a bitch, what's going on? But instead of making a video the day that they announced this, I wanted to take a few days and let it sink in and think about this from many different positions. Looking at this from a promotional perspective, let's be honest. A Canelo Triple G fight right now is probably a 1 million buy pay-per-view. Right around 1 million buys. It would probably resemble the Cotto Canelo card last November, okay? Because Triple G just is not the brand yet that Cotto is. Nowhere near the brand that Canelo is, obviously. So I just don't see it being a very, very successful card commercially right now. But if you think a year from now, next May, if in the meantime, between now and then, Golovkin gets a Danny Jacobs or a Billy Joe Saunders in the ring with him and he unifies another title, and in the meantime, Canelo takes one or two fights at 160 pounds, no more 155 bullshit, a full 160 against a top-rated middleweight. Maybe he goes with a top 15 guy first, like a Curtis Stevens, to test the waters at 160. Maybe he does that this fall, and then late in the winter, he takes on someone like David Lemieux, okay? If that scenario played out, and this thing continued to build for a year, next May, this would be a $2 million or $2 million buy pay-per-view. So I think it would resemble the Mayweather-Canelo card in terms of box office, in terms of business, a year from now. So I understand promotionally why the people at Golden Boy would push it another year. Here's what's a bad look for them. The way they handled the situation with this WBC title thing. Look, all the diva tactics with the catch weights and not wanting to pay the sanctioning fees and dumping the belt, that shit started with Miguel Cotto. You go back to when he fought Sergio Martinez. That was a big risk for him. He was moving up in weight. A lot of people thought Martinez was going to win that fight, but Cotto saw Martinez was a broken fighter. He went up there and did it at the catch weight. He won the title. He ended up paying Golovkin step-aside money to fight Canelo last November. And then right before that fight, a week or two before that fight, Cotto dumped the WBC belt. Remember that? He said, I'm not paying these sanctioning fees. You want me to pay upwards of $1 million so I can have this title? Fuck you. I'm not doing it. Right then and there, Canelo and Golden Boy had their out. And they should have had the foresight to see ahead a year or so. And they should have thought about it. If they would have spun it as, hey man, Cotto ain't paying the sanctioning fee for this title, we're not paying this shit either. If he ain't paying the fee, I ain't paying the fee. Let Golovkin have this damn title. I want to fight for the real title, the lineal title. That's the real middleweight championship, and that's what Cotto has. This is about pride. This is Puerto Rico and Mexico, right? If they would have spun it that way, they wouldn't have had to deal with this shit with Golovkin. Golovkin would have his belt, that's all he wants right now, and Canelo could take his time building into 160 pounds. But they just played it wrong. They went to the WBC this January and made an agreement with Tom Loeffler and Team Golovkin and the BC that, hey, both guys are going to have an interim fight. They knew what the timeline was. They were the ones who kept paying the sanctioning fees to the WBC to keep that title, to help them market a fight against Amir Khan that nobody wanted. And then after all that, then you go into negotiations with Golovkin, then you dump the belt a week out, while there was still a week of negotiations that you could have before the WBC and their artificial deadlines, according to Canelo. So the entire way that Golden Boy played this thing was stupid. It was wrong. From a PR perspective, it was the worst way you could have played it. So this should serve as a lesson for other fighters coming up and other promoters that, are watching this, because everyone in boxing is always watching what the other guy's doing, right? Let this be a lesson. This is not how you handle a situation like this. This was the absolute worst way to handle it. All that being said, look, Vegas odds right now, the bookies in Vegas have Triple G a 4-1 favorite, a betting favorite over Canelo. Most people agree that Golovkin's the heavy favorite. Canelo hasn't fought a top-rate middleweight at 160 pounds yet. Golovkin's fought several of them. He's fought several former titleists and several top 10 ranked middleweights. Canelo hasn't fought one yet. So there's a lot of unanswered questions, and fans need to chill out, let Canelo build himself up. And look, I'll be the first guy to diss if Canelo's next fight, because this Golovkin thing ain't happening this year. If Canelo's next fight is another 155-pound catchweight, and they call that shit a middleweight championship fight, I will be the first to shit all over it. But if he fights somebody like a Curtis Stevens, for example, at 160 pounds, especially if it's on free HBO, you gotta say, man, he's saving face here. And he's answering questions about, can he take a punch from a real middleweight? How is it going to look with those extra 5 pounds? Etc., etc. Questions get answered. The big super fight continues to build up. A lot of you boxing fans that are under 30 years old right now, you've never seen a super fight. Yes, that's right. Mayweather-Pacquiao was not a super fight. Mayweather-Canelo was marketed as a super fight. No, that was a mismatch. That was a cherry pick. That was not a super fight. You guys have not seen a super fight yet, okay? A super fight has to happen at the right time, and there is such a thing as happening a little bit too soon. I am cool with waiting for one more year until next May for Canelo-Golovkin, provided the scenarios I laid out over the last few minutes play out. If those things happen and we get the big fight, it will be a super fight by next year because it will be more competitive on paper, it'll be bigger commercially, and both guys will have proven themselves for the match. So just let's all chill out, let's see what happens. But as of now, there's no way in hell this fight's happening this year, I don't think. Golovkin wants to fight in September and he wants to fight in December. One of those fights at least will be on regular HBO. If he can get a unification fight with a Jacobs or somebody like that, perhaps it'll go pay-per-view. I don't know. With Canelo, I know in theory they'd like to fight twice more this year. I don't know if it'll happen. It depends on what move they make. Billy Joe Saunders is going to be in play here because I can see Golden Boy Promotions throwing a boatload of money at him to lure him to the States to fight Canelo. And I think Saunders is going to go for the biggest bidder here, whether it's Golovkin, whether it's Canelo, whether it's a rematch with Eubank Jr. over in the UK. So Billy Joe Saunders, his people, their phone's going to be ringing a lot over the next month or so. Some more quick news and notes. Kell Brook and Jesse Vargas. As far as I understand it, they've agreed to terms. They're going to fight sometime late summer, I believe. No date or venue or anything at the time of this taping has been set, though. That's a unification match. I like that fight. Brook is a big favorite on paper, but this will be a competitive fight, especially if Brook comes over to the USA. I don't know if that's going to happen, but Kovalev-Chilemba, Sergey Kovalev's fight on July 11th, which is actually a Monday, HBO has announced that they're going to air that on regular HBO. So that will be a Monday night fight. That'll be interesting on regular HBO. I love this because obviously they're not paying a whole lot of HBO for this fight because it's a Monday and it's a small fight. It's a, just a stay busy kind of thing. So they're shelling out a few $100,000 to show this fight, to show their subscribers one of their best fighters, one of the top fighters in the world. I like this a lot. And I'd like to see more of this stuff when some of these guys want to stay busy, and you can't blame them. Kovalev in main events wanted to stay busy. They're not going to sit around waiting forever for Andre Ward. They went over to Russia to take a stay busy fight. HBO doing the right thing here, ponying up a couple $100,000 to show this fight to their subscribers. Lara Motorosian 2, that card with Lara and the Charlo brothers, which I'll talk more about later, that actually did the second highest Showtime boxing telecast, the second highest rating of the year. It was just a few thousand behind Deontay Wilder, Arthur Szpilka earlier this year. They averaged 490,000 viewers, and Wilder Szpilka was at 550,000. Pretty respectable, that shows that there's some interest. I think a lot of that was probably in the Charlo brothers. But I think it's just there hasn't been a lot of fights on recently, right? On regular Showtime or HBO, especially showcasing American fighters. So I think that there was some interest among the few Showtime subscribers that are left, because I know a lot of people that have canceled their Showtime and HBO subscriptions this year, but a lot of people tuned in. But just to put this into perspective, and I know I'm going to get shit from you guys, from some of you out there for saying this, but Golovkin Wade, HBO's highest rated broadcast of the year, did 1.3 million views. And I know HBO's in more homes than Showtime, but that's almost 3 times as many people tuning in to watch that fight. And when you consider the gate that Golovkin did, selling out the forum and the merchandise sales and all that stuff, let's just keep things in perspective, okay? Okay, so now I very quickly want to touch on something. I'm sure we'll be talking more about this in the future, but a few of you have asked me and confronted me on Twitter and here on my channel about what is this demographic thing that you see Steve Kim tweeting, you see Doug Fisher's talked about it. Other boxing journalists, that I respect have talked about this. I've talked about it. I haven't specifically used the word, but I guess I'm breaking that rule today. I just want to explain to you what this is, okay, and where it comes from. And it's in relation specifically to Triple G hate. Most of you guys who watch this show, you've probably seen my Golovkin hate video from last year, which is still very, very relevant and still continues to get thousands of hits a week. And you probably have seen an episode that we touched upon this on 10 Count, on Undisputed Champion Network's channel on YouTube. This was last year, I think after Golovkin fought Monroe, where myself, Steve Kim, Doug Fisher touched on some of the hate coming on Gennady Golovkin. I continue to see posts on Facebook, comments on my YouTube channel, on other YouTube channels, all kinds of stuff on Twitter, all kinds of memes, okay, that are just flat out ignorant. Some of them are just racist, which, that exists in all circles on social media. It comes from all directions, right? I'm not one of these people that thinks racism only exists in one place. It exists everywhere. Everyone can be racist. This bullshit that certain people can't and only certain people can, that's stupid. I don't subscribe to that social justice warrior, regressive left bullshit, okay? Everyone can be racist, and there's racist shit everywhere. But there's a special faction of fans on social media that seem to hate Golovkin, and they hate Kovalev, and they loop them together, but it's really, really on Golovkin because he's getting a lot of mainstream love. Kovalev doesn't. Kovalev, most people, he's never been on SportsCenter, he's not getting endorsement deals. Golovkin's getting a lot of love, and some of the people, the trends I've noticed, and this is what I've been bringing up for the last year or so, going back to my Golovkin hate video. A lot of it is the circle that runs with TMT, that runs with TMT's website, his hype site. You guys know what I'm talking about. That runs with the Haye crowd, that fan base. Boxing is very, very fractioned, especially in the United States. And, I've talked about this in many, many platforms. Just Google my work on this stuff. But you kind of got the Haye faction, which includes Mayweather and all that, and everyone else here in the United States. And there's a few independent brokers like a K2 Promotions and people like that who kind of go back and forth and work with everybody. But the big power brokers, there's this separation. And now in the age of social media and the 24-hour news cycle and clickbait and all this shit, media is fractioned as well. And people can go to the media source they like because it feeds their confirmation bias. If you have a bias, if you have a prejudice, you're going to seek out a news source that caters to your prejudice. And there's a lot of YouTube channels out there that I think cheat because they race bait, they clickbait, and gullible, indoctrinated, prejudiced, racist people feed into that shit and subscribe to that channel and give it a click, and that person who runs that channel makes money off of these people. And they're usually kids. It's usually college, high school age kids who started watching boxing when Manny Pacquiao or Floyd Mayweather became popular, right? Pick your poison. And there's racist whack jobs in the Pacquiao side and the Mayweather side. But the majority of this Golovkin hate is coming from the Mayweather side. It's coming from a particular demographic of fan. And I've talked about this, and I know it's uncomfortable, and in this age of hypersensitivity and political correctness that we live in, most people are scared shitless to talk about this stuff. But I'm not a guilt-ridden cuckold motherfucker. I tell it like it is. And I am not coming at this from a sheltered place, where I grew up in some little valley somewhere and I don't know what the fuck's going on the ground, okay? You guys who really follow me, you know my background, where I'm from, what I've been through. I'm speaking about this from a fucking first-hand knowledge and experience, frame of mind, point of view, okay? Let me just read to you a tweet today from Doug Fisher, who, for those of you who just started watching boxing a few years ago, Doug Fisher has been involved in this sport for decades. Because of his background, not just in boxing, but in life, and where he's lived in different parts of the country, different things he's been through with his family, his opinion on racial matters, I respect probably more than anybody in this business. Mostly because Doug tells the truth unapologetically. And when he talks about anything related to this subject, I just shut up and listen to him because I know I'm going to learn something. I just saw this today on Twitter where, I'll put this up on the screen right here. Doug said, he was explaining the demographic thing. He says, here is my short definition of the demographic. Racially biased African American boxing fans that are uninformed jerks. I know that makes some of you uncomfortable. Doug wasn't saying most black boxing fans are the demographic or most black boxing fans are uninformed. He wasn't saying that. He was saying most of the Triple G haters, most of the demographic are these young, uninformed TMT fans, the majority of whom, the overwhelming majority of whom, are black, okay? And I've seen kids of all stripes rocking TMT hats and, posting dis instead of this. I've seen blonde hair, blue-eyed Anglo kids tweeting shit like that and saying, nigga this, nigga that. I've seen Mexican kids saying, nigga. It's like, you're Mexican. What the fuck are you saying that for? I've seen Asian kids talking like that, okay? I've seen Italian kids, Jewish kids, whatever, talking like that. There are exceptions, but the rule is most of the hate, the demographic is mostly comprised of young black kids who started watching boxing with Floyd Mayweather. Here's some of just a sprinkling of memes and graphics that I see all the time on my newsfeed. Check this one out. That moment you realize Butterbean has a better resume than Triple G. That's so stupid, I don't even know how to respond to that. But, that's a sane one, okay? Here's one. The Bodyguard. Sergey Kovalev, Gennady Golovkin. Protect from the evil ward. Now, obviously, this is some kid that buys into the thing that Triple G ducked Andre Ward, even though we've been over that 1,000 times. Here's one that's hilarious. Pacquiao fans watching the Mayweather fight. The guy goes into the bushes, he comes out, he's a Triple G fan. I find this one particularly stupid because I have seen literally zero crossover of old Pacquiao fans and his overzealous. Some of his fans were overzealous, uninformed, newbies, just like the Mayweather guys. I haven't seen any of those people rocking Triple G. Most of Triple G's fans are old school boxing heads, guys who have actually been watching boxing for decades. And here in the greater LA area, Mexican Americans, not Pacquiao fans. There's no crossover, so to even make that comparison is stupid. On the flip side, as soon as Mayweather dismissed Pacquiao, all those Flomos needed a new guy to hate. And a lot of them started hating on Triple G. They tried to hate on Kovalev, but Kovalev beat their boy Bernard Hopkins, so they couldn't hate on him no more. Okay, here's one that upsets me because this is from a person that I really, really used to look up to and admire, and when I was first getting started in this business big time, was senior to me in this business. And this is just very telling because there's a portion of the boxing media that has jumped onto this Golovkin hate thing. But check out this post on Facebook. Triple G versus Lara, why not? Negotiations for Canelo versus Triple G are underway, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to read all this. But what he's saying, second paragraph, Team Golovkin has declined to take this bout, despite Lara agreeing to come up to 160 pounds to meet him. There's no reason not to take this bout. Blah, 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 blah. That whole post was saying that Lara wants a fight with Triple G, is willing to come to 160 pounds, and Team Golovkin has declined the fight. This is on a page that has thousands of followers, most of whom belong to the demographic. Lara hasn't done anything more than tweet a couple times about Golovkin. His team hasn't reached out to Tom Loeffler. I've asked Tom Loeffler directly on an episode of 10 Count on Undisputed Champion Network. You guys have seen it. Golovkin and his team haven't declined to fight Lara. If Lara came to 160 pounds and his team offered Golovkin a contract and they wanted to fight him, Golovkin would take the damn fight. For a respected person who's supposedly a knowledgeable boxing person to post stuff like this and tweet stuff like this and say it in such a way to where it makes Golovkin look like he declined to fight Lara. And thousands of people are seeing this. This is why I say indoctrinated. Young kids who don't know the history of boxing, even casual fans who are in their 40s or 50s, who don't follow boxing very closely and have a confirmation bias, if not a prejudice, see posts like that and believe it as news. And that's where these ideas come from. And that's why you see all these hateful tweets and hateful memes going out there. This is the demographic. I'm sure we'll talk more about this, but for now, I'm going to move on and we're going to get into the review of last week's action. All right, so last Saturday, there was some good boxing action, a really, really nice heavyweight fight that I tweeted about. Joseph Parker was a unanimous decision over Carlos Takam. Takam, I'm not exactly sure how you say his last name. I don't mean that disrespectfully, I just don't know. But Parker won by the scores of 116, 112 twice, 115, 113. He improves to 19-0 with 16 KOs. Goes the full 12 with Takam, who I consider a fringe top 10 heavyweight. He might not be top 10 right now because that knockout loss to Golovkin, although it looks kind of shady now looking back if you think about it, right? He's at least a top 15 heavyweight. And he's a quality guy that's going to give rounds to anybody. That fight with Golovkin, which I talked about, that fight was even going late into that fight before the stoppage. So Parker, who had I think almost no amateur background, virtually none, and is still a very, very green prospect, goes 12 rounds. This is an IBF eliminator. He's going to be in line for the title shot at Anthony Joshua, I want to say next year. But he's nowhere near ready for that. First of all, let me say this. The fight itself was reminiscent, and I tweeted this, of those HBO Boxing After Dark heavyweight fights in the 90s that were just fun, that were quality heavyweight fights. It wasn't two fat asses flailing at each other. Look, neither of these guys are going to win a Mr. Olympia contest, but they're both big, strong guys who were in shape, and there was some skills and some fun. Both guys took some punishment. Both guys showed some grit. Just a good heavyweight fight, man. And this is just, it shows that the heavyweight division is coming back. There really is some good talent coming up in the heavyweight division right now. It's just not American fighters. And some of you guys that have that narrow mind that the heavyweight division has to be full of American fighters to be good, you gotta let go of that shit. Boxing is a global sport. And there's guys from all over the world now in the heavyweight division that are making it fun. So you need to check some of these fights out. But here's the thing. I mentioned Parker being in line for Joshua. He's not ready yet. He leaves his chin up too much, gets hit way too much, brings his left jab back really, really low. He's wide open for straight rights, especially from a taller fighter. Parker's like my size. He's like 6'3", 6'4". Anthony Joshua would be punching down at him, and Joshua's a stronger guy with better power. And I just think he'd tee off with right hands. Parker needs to learn to move his head. He has no head movement, and he needs to keep his hands up when he jabs. There's several things he could work on. Just better upper body fluidity, I think. But he's shown a good chin. He's showed fighter instinct. He's shown some stamina. In this fight, he had to dig deep. Takam pressured him and won a few rounds and actually pushed him late in this fight. And Parker had to show something, and he did. I really just thought this was a great prospect building kind of matchup. And I looked at both their records, Parker and Joshua. Here's what's interesting. Parker has gone 7 or more rounds 5 times already. He has gone 10 or more rounds twice. Anthony Joshua has only gone 3 rounds or more 3 times. And he's never gone past the 7th. So when you look at who's being built up better so far in a career, you have to say Parker. And who's fought the best opponent so far? Parker. Because nobody Joshua has fought is on Takim's level. Not Dillian White. I don't rate White that highly. White might be a top 20, maybe top 25, all right? But he hasn't proven to me yet that he's a top 15, top 10 level guy. He just hasn't shown that yet. Carlos Takam has. He's been in there with some good fighters. And for Parker to go 12 rounds like this and close strong the way he did, very good building, learning lesson for him, man. Look for that fight on YouTube if you haven't seen it. And just, tell me what you think about him, because I think he's got some potential, but he's got a lot to clean up. Joshua, obviously, much better fundamentals and bigger size, bigger power. So Parker needs to put the brakes on that IBF eliminator. He's nowhere near ready for that. But over in Moscow, cruiserweight fight. Denis Lebedev scores a second-round TKO over Victor Emilio Ramirez to unify the IBF WBA cruiserweight titles. Lebedev dropped him in the second round, Ramirez. Ramirez got up, but Lebedev was just teeing off. So Steve Smoger, who will let fighters fight, he gave Ramirez every chance to show he wanted to fight. He wasn't punching back. So there's no reason, those of you who haven't seen this fight, to think it was a Russian stoppage or home cooking. It was nothing like that. Steve Smoger really gave Ramirez a chance, and he just was outgunned. Lebedev now has 2 titles at cruiserweight, and that's a fun division right now with some nice prospects coming up. We just need more unification. Cruiserweight's not a very popular division, but I've always thought that there's some real talent there. There's just very rarely do you get unification in that division. When people unify, it just heats up a division. So now we got a guy with 2 titles. Let's see if those other titleists can get in the mix. And these prospects, the guy Usyk from Ukraine, he looks to be the goods. But for now, unify these titles, and some of these prospects will eventually challenge for them. But in London, former cruiserweight champion, legitimate cruiserweight champion, David Haye scores a second-round TKO over a pizza boy. And on the undercard, Shannon the Cannon Briggs scores a first-round knockout over a cab driver. These two are probably going to fight later this year. That's the rumor. I know, don't shoot the messenger, but that's the rumor. David Haye. I've never been big on David Haye. And I know that my UK followers will be mad at me for this because people in the UK just seem to love this guy. He's a draw. He did a big rating for this fight, and he fought a guy that I could knock out and spar on right now. But he did a big rating, did a pretty good gate, pretty good crowd, and you have to figure he's eventually going to talk himself into a title match against a Joshua, a Tyson Fury, if he beats Klitschko in their rematch. Haye, notice I didn't say fight his way into a fight, because Haye doesn't do that. I did a blurb on Boxing Monthly's website this week. Check it out. Boxing Monthly weekly does this thing where they call it the big question, right? So you guys check it out on the website, because you won't see it in the magazine. You guys who subscribe to the magazine, make sure you go over to the website and check that out. The big question. This week, the big question is, what do you think about David Haye's comeback? And I kind of laid into Haye a little bit, so let me know what you guys think of that. I might piss off some of you, but he was the legitimate champ at cruiserweight. He beat Mormac, who was the man, right? And then he unified with Enzo Maccarinelli, who was never anything special, B-rate level guy, but he had a title. As soon as Haye unified the division, boom, he moved up to heavyweight. His entire heavyweight campaign, in my opinion, has been very, very pedestrian. He barely barely beat Nikolai Valuev, the giant 7-footer from Russia, in one of the worst title fights in recent heavyweight history. 2 years prior, or maybe it was a year prior, Ruslan Shagayev fought Nikolai Valuev and decisively beat Valuev and took the WBA title. But the WBA stripped Shagayev when he unified with Vladimir Klitschko. And thus, Nikolai Valuev was given a full championship. Again, even though he had lost to Shagayev, and I think he was coming off a win over an ancient Evander Holyfield in a fight that most people thought the 58-year-old Holyfield, he might have been 83 at that time, won. Most people thought Holyfield beat Valuev. Valuev got the decision, kept a completely paper title. This was the WBA title Valuev had. Haye beat Valuev in a sparring session for that title, and then circled around Vladimir Klitschko for years, talked himself into a $20 million payday, ran for 12 rounds against Klitschko, and blamed it on a pinky toe. From that point forward, I just haven't given a flying fuck about anything David Haye did. Now, if he talks himself into a fight with Tyson Fury, that would be a lot of fun just because of the antics. You'd have two of the craziest people in boxing, two of the wackiest personalities. That would just be a lot of fun. The fight would be god-awful, but it'd be a lot of fun. If Haye actually gets into a fight with Anthony Joshua, I think it would actually be interesting for a couple rounds because Haye could land the haymaker, as they say, and Joshua has shown that he could be caught cold early in fights. He doesn't move his head very, very well, not yet. So that might be interesting for a couple rounds, but Haye would run and be in survival mode, and that fight wouldn't be very good either. What would make it interesting is if Joshua could knock out David Haye. Then he'd become even a bigger hero than he already is in the UK. The big card here in America, and there were several small cards on Friday night and everything, but the big card here in America last week, I talked about earlier, Erislandy Lara wins a unanimous decision over Vanes Martirosyan to defend his WBA junior middleweight title. There was really no need for this rematch. I told you guys what Martirosyan would do. He'd be competitive enough to lose a decisive decision and go on social media and bitch that he was robbed. Okay, bam. So, Jermell Charlo, he scored an 8th round KO over John Jackson to win the vacant WBC title. Interesting about this fight, Charlo was getting I'm not going to say his ass whooped, he was being outboxed. He was down all 3 cards. And remember, Charlo's the house fighter, right? Down all 3 cards, 69-64. John Jackson was really just outboxing him. For those of you, you might remember John Jackson from being ahead in a fight with Andy Lee a couple years back before getting clocked and knocked the hell out with 1 punch. It's kind of what happened here. Charlo didn't knock him out with 1 punch like Andy Lee did because he doesn't punch as hard as Andy Lee, but he hit him with a good shot, really, really hurt Jackson. Jackson turned his back, wasn't defending himself. Referee Tony Weeks stopped the fight. So Jermell Charlo bails himself out with a home run punch, wins a vacant WBC title. Jermall Charlo defends his IBF strap against Austin Trout in a very competitive, skillful, fairly entertaining fight. He wins the unanimous decision, 116-112 twice, 115-113. Fairly even punch numbers. If you looked at the CompuBox stats, which you really can't trust, the punch numbers were fairly even. The offensive output was fairly even. It just felt like Jermall Charlo's punches were straighter, they were harder, they were more accurate. And throughout the fight, he seemed to control the majority of the action. But I talked about going the distance and everything, and a good learning lesson for Joseph Parker. I think this was a good learning lesson for Jermall Charlo because Austin Charlo is a good quality fighter who's been in there with some top guys. So to go 12 rounds with him and lose some rounds to him and make adjustments in there, this will be good for Jermall Charlo. When it comes to the Charlos, just remember A, okay? The E, Jermell Charlo, really isn't much to be excited about. But the A, Jermall Charlo, he's the better Charlo. And I'd love to see him fight Erislandy Lara. For all this talk about Golovkin-Lara, which isn't going to happen. There's no reason for that fight to happen unless Lara vacates his title and moves it up to 160 pounds. And, actually contacts Golovkin's people. Ain't going to happen. So, you're Al Heyman. You've got 3 junior middleweight titles. I don't expect the Charlo brothers to fight each other. That's sick, right? We never expected the Klitschko brothers to fight each other. So it'd be unfair to expect the Charlo brothers to fight each other. But, look, why not have Jermall Charlo, the better Charlo brother, fight Erislandy Lara and unify titles and become the lineal champion at 154? Why not go there? It's an easy fight to make. This fight did a decent rating. I think it'd be a very marketable fight that could do well for Showtime. So, come on, PBC, let's see it. All right, real quick, this week, Wednesday in Beijing, May 25th, Amnat Ruenroy, he's the Thai flyweight titleist, is rematching the Filipino fighter John Riel Casimero. These guys fought last June in Thailand, and I guess the IBF mandated this rematch because there was some controversy about the decision or something. But here's the thing: this was the first fight was last June, and Ruenroy has fought since. I think one time. But Casimero has not fought since. It's been almost a year. But this one's on neutral territory in Beijing. It'll be interesting to see who wins this decision. If Ruenroy can pull this out. And look, he's got a few defenses of his title. He fought McWilliams Arroyo. A lot of people felt that Arroyo got robbed in that fight. Ruenroy has had a couple of fights where people feel he got the benefit of some home cooking, right? He's got a flyweight title. He might want to cash out here and go for a money fight. Go after Juan Francisco Estrada and unify, I think, 3 of the 4 belts. Call out Chocolatito, who wants maybe 1, maybe 2 more fights, but probably looking like 1 more fight at flyweight before he moves up. Friday in Niagara Falls, New York, Jarrell Miller, big baby, big heavyweight, 16-0 with 14 knockouts. He's going up against a fighter from Kansas I've never heard of, Nick Guivas, 12-3 with 2 draws. This is a bit of a disappointment for me for Jarrell Miller, who I've been watching. He's an American heavyweight prospect. He's got some skills. I told you guys before, he sparred with the Klitschko brothers. He has a kickboxing background, and that's hurting him a little bit so far with his spacing and the timing and everything in boxing, but he's learned well from that sparring experience with the Klitschkos. And he does have some skill and craft, and more than any of that, he has fighter instincts, right? And it doesn't matter what martial art you do, whether it be kickboxing, wrestling, boxing, fighter instincts translate and correlate to every form of martial art. So that kickboxing background helps him in boxing in that regard. But this is a downgrade in opponent since his last fight in January. I'm not quite sure. I guess this is just a stay busy kind of fight for him. He was 274 pounds in that January fight. The best he's ever looked, I want to say it was a year or 2 ago, he weighed like 255. He's never going to win a Mr. Olympia contest. But if he could lose 20 pounds of titties, he could be a player in the division. He comes into this fight looking like a fat fuck, like he has been in recent fights. What can I say, man? He's just going to be another fat, bloated American heavyweight who doesn't want to get serious. And the minute he steps up against one of these guys from overseas, he's going to get his clock clean. This Saturday in the Philippines, down in Nietes, going up against Raul Garcia of Mexico. Nietes is from the Philippines. Defending his WBO 108-pound title. He's made it very, very clear. Nietes has been one of the more consistent, really, really good little guys in boxing over the last, I want to say 10 years. After this fight, should it be successful, he wants to move up to 112 pounds and go after some titles there. Mainly, he wants Juan Francisco Estrada. So, it'd be interesting to see if he can make that happen. There's some great things happening at flyweight, especially if Nietes wins this fight and moves up. In Poland, Saturday, Krzysztof Włodarczyk is going after a minor title against Kai Kurzawa, who's a German fighter. I know that name sounds Japanese, but he's a German fighter. And he's trying to work his way, Włodarczyk is, into an IBF mandatory. If he's successful here, I think he's on his way. And he'll be looking at a title shot maybe late this year, definitely next year. Wlodarczyk has had titles before at cruiserweight. Like I said, there's talent in that division. We just need these top guys to keep fighting each other. In Scotland, Ricky Burns going after a vacant 140-pound title, WBA, against Italian fighter Michele DeRocco. Ricky Burns is 3-3-1 in his last 7 fights. So how the hell the WBA sanctions this for a vacant title is beyond me. The WBA is the laughing stock of sanctioning bodies. Of all the top major sanctioned bodies in boxing, the WBA is the worst. And this is just another endless example of how. Again, Ricky Burns, 3-3-1, last 7 fights. As far as I understand it, last few fights have been a lightweight. Hasn't had a fight at 140 pounds. He might have had one, I think, against Figueroa, lost that fight. And now he's fighting for a vacant title against an Italian fighter who hasn't been in with anybody. Go figure. Here in the United States, Glendale, Arizona, Shane Mosley, the 9,000-year-old Shane Mosley, going up against a Russian fighter, David Avanzian. I don't really care to see this. You know, Shane shouldn't be fighting, but he made some poor decisions with who he married a while back, and it's biting him in the ass right now, and he needs money, so good for him. If he can pull this win out, look, he will continue fighting if he wins this fight. So, you know, even though Shane Mosley was one of my favorite fighters in the last generation, I'm kind of rooting against him here because I just think he needs to hang them up, man. These guys that fight on too long, it's not good for their health. In San Antonio, there's a PBC on Fox Sports 1 card. No real exciting matchups there, anything to talk about. But if you're bored on Saturday and you want to watch some free boxing, you got a couple options there. Fox Sports 1, check out that PBC card. That's it, guys. I know this was a really, really long episode, but I had a lot of stuff to discuss. I know this is going to be controversial because I talked about the demographic. I talked about the Canelo thing with Triple G, the Lara Triple G thing. Let me know where you guys stand on all that. Let's get the discussion going. Keep it civil. No racist bullshit. If I start seeing racial slurs and all that crap, you will get blocked. Not doing that shit. But until next week, I'll see you guys at the fights.